It's former mayor of Côte-des-Neiges, NDG, and former journalist Sue Montgomery. Hi, Sue.
Hi, long time no speak to.
Yes, well, I think the last time I saw you was at Westmount Tavern, but I could be wrong.
No.
I think it might have been. Listen, I want to start off because, I noticed the first topic you have on the sheet for today concerns local politics, which is interesting because we don't usually get this kind of insight. So if I can read what you wrote here, you're suggesting now that when it comes to council, there is zero opposition in council. What do you mean by that?
Well, I just find that, the opposition in city council is very weak. I don't feel that Ensemble Montréal is really taking Projet Montréal to task. And the other thing I noticed, and I don't know if it's just me, but a lot of the borough mayors are very quiet. And I find that if there's anyone speaking, it's usually Valérie Plante. And from what I hear from inside the party, a lot of people have been muzzled in the sense that, like the whole idea of Montreal doing politics differently has gone out the window. And we really don't hear from some of the people that we used to hear from, like Alex Norris, François Limage. We just don't hear from them at all. And I just feel like a lot of people have been silent. So that's just my sense. And from what I'm hearing from inside the party.
Okay.
I wonder if perhaps they've just realized that it's futile to speak up, Sue.
Jeez, that's
or
terrible.
Dangerous.
Or
dangerous, yeah.
That's an interesting perspective.
I'm curious, though. You think this is... Now, I'm not sure. I used to always think Valérie Plante herself was being muzzled by the party. In other words, the party has, their ideology, and she's kind of the figurehead, if you will. And I don't know if that's changed. I don't know if you think that's wrong, but that's what I always sort of had an idea of. Is that still the case, do you think?
No, I don't think so.
No?
From what I'm hearing from insiders, it's the Valérie Plante show.
Oh, okay.
And nobody can, there's no sort of dissent
tolerated,
accepted or allowed or encouraged. And that's my sense also from, and maybe people just aren't covering. Maybe the media just aren't covering what's going on in municipal. Like we don't have any journalists anymore, so maybe that's the problem. But they used to be very, democratic in the sense that you could have dissenting views. But I find that she basically has gotten rid of any of the strong voices in the party, and it's her show.
Very interesting.
That is an interesting take.
Zero opposition is never a good thing because I just find there's less accountability and less things getting done. Now, Valérie Plante has been trying to address the housing crisis that we're experiencing here in Montreal, and she has been calling for the province to step up and do more. Now she's also calling for property owners to step up, Sue?
Yeah, so especially in Côte-des-Neiges, NDG, it's basically the property owners. I don't know what they're called, like developers. They're not developers, I guess, but they own a number of apartment buildings. And I'm guessing they're the ones that aren't very profitable or that need a lot of work, and that, the city could buy them. And if they were to get a good price for them, great. And if they are willing to fix them up so that they're livable, that's also great. But the one question I always had as mayor, and I was never able to get an answer for it, is that developers, when they do a project, they're supposed to give a certain percentage to a social housing fund or build social housing within their project. And most of them obviously opt just to give the percent of the money to this fund. And I was never able to find out, what happens with this fund. Because the city is always saying that the province needs to be building social housing, which is true, but I would just like to know where this fund goes and what is it used for? Is it used to fix up old buildings? I could never get a straight answer for that. Somewhere there's a piggy bank with a bunch of money in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think back even to the previous administration, during the Kader administration, right? We had buildings, condos that were being developed, and the city made a point. I think the mayor did at the time, was saying, hey, look at this. They're going to put up this thing. It's going to cost a couple of $100 million, but don't worry. They've already pledged that they will have this much or this percentage of it for affordable or social housing. And then at the end of the day, like 2 months later or 6 months later, the developer will simply say, our plans have changed.
Yeah.
We'll just pay whatever that fine is to, I guess that means to go into the fund you're describing, and it gets forgotten. But this happens over and over again.
Well, and what happened to Valerie Plante's 2020 plan, where every new development had to have 20% affordable, 20% family, 20% social, whatever. I don't know what happened with that either. Is it working? Because it certainly seems that we're in the midst of a housing crisis. Young people cannot afford to live alone, let alone with maybe one roommate. And the apartments that are out there for rent could hardly be called apartments. It's sort of a bit like New York or Toronto, where they're renting out a tiny little studio and calling it a one-bedroom or whatever. So, it's a real concern. And, we're seeing more and more homeless people on the street as a result of it.
Yeah, and July 1st coming up, fast and furious. I mean, I have to say my impression of this, the way that the city has been dealing with it, and the province to some degree as well, is just by kind of trying to always make it somebody else's problem and never really having a real solution. Do you have that same impression?
Or worse, we have our premier saying, well, what's wrong with high real estate prices?
Yeah, it means things are going well. Right.
City? Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things wrong with it. For one thing, most people can't afford it. I don't know who has that kind of down payment for $1 million house.
Yeah.
I guess, and how they're supposed to save it, because our wages certainly have not kept up with inflation. So, I really don't know. I mean, I have two kids, they're in their 20s. And I'm really concerned that they're never going to be able to afford a place to live.
I'm going to
And they're going to live with me.
Uh-oh.
Lucky you. I'm going to do a question about rent registry coming up, because, there are a bunch of mayors that all got together here around the province saying it's time to have a rent registry here. Was that something that ever came up when you were mayor?
Yes, we did talk about that, and I think it's a very good idea because, you want to see what the previous rent was. Now, the problem is a lot of people, don't know their rights, or if you want an apartment, you just do what the landlord says. And there's a lot of landlords out there right now that are charging money just to see their apartment.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
So at the end of the day, you don't have to rent the place out. You just keep showing it to people and get them to pay to see it. And, in the end, you never have to actually have a tenant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of...
I'm sure that's not a working business model, but I have heard that is actually happening.
Well, I more just think with the rental registry, I mean, right now you're supposed to disclose the rent as it is, and it doesn't stop the situation from ensuing. And I think it'll be the same so you'll look online and see, hey, they only paid $50, but you still have to go to the tribunal. You still have to go through, and you're not going to do it because you're desperate to have the place.
Exactly, and you don't want to get on the wrong side of your landlord before you've even moved in.
Hey, Sue, we have to wrap up. I did want to ask you one thing. I noticed this week that there's going to be, you might probably heard the story, a cage match between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, from Meta. Would you consider the same against Valerie Plante, like a cage match, the two of you against each other? Would that work for charity?
I have nothing against Valerie Plante.
No, I know, but I just, you previously clashed.
I'm not a fighter. I'm not a fighter.